Lord, quiet my mind in the middle of this uncertainty. You are not tired because of your life. You are tired because your mind has not been silent for days. You keep smiling, keep working, keep talking to people, but inside there is a constant noise, anxiety, fear, overthinking every decision, trying to hear God and only finding more questions. And the hardest part is that no one sees this battle because it happens in silence, in the late hours, in the moments when you should be resting, but your thoughts keep running. There is a reason why this showed up for you right now. This is not just about feeling overwhelmed or searching for peace in the middle of uncertainty. This is about understanding what God is doing in your mind while everything around you feels unstable, and why the Holy Spirit often works in the place where you feel the most mental pressure. Stay here, because in the next few minutes, you are going to recognize something that will change the way you face anxiety, fear, and the waiting season you are living through. The invisible battle for your mind. Uncertainty rarely announces itself through events. It begins as a quiet occupation of your thoughts. It is the slow invasion that happens when your mind starts trying to solve what God has not yet revealed. You notice it when you wake up, and your first feeling is not physical tiredness, but mental weight, as if the night did not bring rest because your thoughts never stopped moving. You move through the day functioning, answering messages, fulfilling responsibilities, speaking with people. But inside, there is a continuous background noise. You analyze every possibility, you replay every word, you attempt to foresee every outcome, believing that if you think enough, you will finally feel safe. What makes this battle invisible is that from the outside, your life still looks normal, your faith still exists, your routine continues, yet internally you are carrying conversations that never end and fears that never fully take shape. This is not simply anxiety. It is the human desire for control, searching for a place where it cannot exist. Your mind was never created to sustain the weight of tomorrow, but in seasons of uncertainty, it tries to become a source of protection. It builds scenarios to avoid pain. It creates strategies to prevent disappointment. It searches for signs in everything. And the more it works, the more exhausted you become. You start to measure your spirituality by your ability to remain calm, and when peace does not come, a subtle guilt appears. You ask yourself why you cannot just trust, why your prayer is sincere, but your thoughts continue to run, why you believe in God and still feel overwhelmed. In this moment, many people begin to fight themselves, trying to silence their own mind by force, as if inner quietness was something that could be achieved through effort. But the real struggle is not between you and your thoughts. The true battle is about who occupies your mental space, because your attention is the most valuable territory of your spiritual life. What you constantly contemplate begins to shape what you feel, and what you feel begins to shape what you believe. If your mind is filled with images of loss, you begin to live as if loss were already certain. If your mind is filled with questions without answers, you begin to feel abandoned, even when God is present. This is why the attack always begins in the mind, not in your circumstances. Your peace is not destroyed by what happens outside of you. It is weakened by the interpretation that is repeated within you. There is also a reason why this battle intensifies in moments when you are seeking God more deeply. When your life is being repositioned, when decisions are approaching, when a new season is forming without clear definition, your old ways of feeling secure start to collapse. The structures that once gave you a sense of control no longer work, and your mind tries to compensate by thinking more, planning more, anticipating more. It feels like responsibility, but in reality it is fear wearing the clothes of wisdom. And because it happens silently, you do not always recognize it as a spiritual process. You think you are losing your peace, when in fact, God is exposing the place where your peace was never meant to come from. This is why forcing yourself to stop thinking has never worked. The mind does not become quiet because it receives answers. It becomes quiet when it finds a presence greater than the questions. And this is the turning point. You begin to understand that this season is not a punishment, and it is not a sign that something is wrong with your faith. It is the moment where God is inviting you to move from mental control to spiritual trust. The noise you are experiencing is revealing how much you have been carrying alone. It is showing you the weight you were never designed to hold. And instead of condemning you, this revelation becomes the beginning of freedom, because once you see the battle clearly, you stop blaming yourself for feeling overwhelmed and start discerning what is truly happening inside you. Your mind has been a battlefield, not because you are weak, but because your life is being led into a deeper level of dependence on God. The uncertainty that disturbs you is also the place where false securities are losing their power. You are not being abandoned in the confusion. You are being taught to stand in a different kind of peace, one that does not come from knowing the future, but from knowing who walks with you inside it. And as this understanding begins to form, something shifts quietly within you. The thoughts may still come, the questions may still exist, but they no longer have the same authority, because you are starting to recognize that your mind was never meant to be your refuge. It was meant to be a place where the presence of God dwells. Why uncertainty attacks the mind. First, uncertainty always looks like a problem in your circumstances, but its first point of contact is your mind, because that is where your sense of safety is formed. Before anything actually happens, your thoughts begin to search for stability, for a clear direction, for something that can be held. This is why the most intense moments of this season are not the external events, but the internal interpretations you create about them. You try to read signs in everything, you try to anticipate what God has not yet revealed, and without realizing it, you start living in a future that does not exist. Your body remains in the present, but your mind moves constantly between what could go wrong and what you hope will change. This distance between where you are and where your thoughts keep going is what produces the feeling of being overwhelmed. The mind was created to process what is real, not to sustain endless possibilities. When it is placed in a space where there are no clear answers, it tries to protect you by generating scenarios. It believes that if it can imagine every outcome, it will prevent pain. But this mechanism that once helped you make decisions becomes a source of exhaustion when there is nothing concrete to solve. You are not tired because life is heavier than before. You are tired because your mind is working without rest, trying to create a certainty that only God can give. And the more you think, the more distant peace feels, because peace was never meant to come from understanding everything. There is a spiritual dimension in this process that many people do not perceive. Uncertainty exposes where your trust has been placed. When you knew what was coming next, you felt stable. When your plans were clear, your faith felt strong. But now that the path is not fully visible, you feel vulnerable. And this vulnerability makes your mind search for something to hold. This is not a sign that your faith disappeared. It is the moment where your faith is being separated from your need for control. God is not the author of confusion, but He often allows seasons where your usual sources of security are removed, so that your dependence shifts from what you can predict to who He is. This is why your thoughts have become louder in this season. It is not only emotional, it is a transition. Your mind is trying to return to a place where it used to feel in charge, while your spirit is being invited into a deeper trust. And between these two movements, you feel tension. One part of you wants immediate clarity. The other part senses that God is doing something even without explanations. This is the internal conflict that produces restlessness during prayer, that makes you start talking to God and suddenly move back into planning, calculating, and questioning. It is not that you do not believe, it is that your mind has been trained for years to equate certainty with peace. But true peace begins when your mind stops being the source of your security and becomes a place of surrender. The reason uncertainty attacks your thoughts first is because once your focus is captured by fear, your perception of everything changes. Situations that are neutral begin to look threatening. Waiting begins to feel like loss. Silence begins to feel like absence. And this is how anxiety grows, not from reality, but from interpretation. Yet in the same place where this battle happens, transformation also begins. Because when you understand that your need to know is not the same as your need for God, something inside you starts to slow down. You begin to realize that not having answers does not mean you are without direction, that not seeing the outcome does not mean God is inactive, that the future is not your responsibility to carry. This understanding does not come as a sudden emotional relief. It comes as a quiet repositioning. Your thoughts still try to run, but now there is a new awareness observing them. You start to notice when your mind moves into fear, when it tries to solve what cannot be solved today, when it builds scenarios that remove you from the present moment where God is actually sustaining you. And in this awareness, the noise begins to lose its power. Uncertainty is not attacking you to destroy your peace. It is revealing where your peace has been located. It shows you how much you depended on clarity to feel safe, how much you associated control with stability. And as this is exposed, a new form of trust becomes possible, one that does not need immediate answers to remain steady. Your mind is being retrained to rest in the character of God instead of the predictability of your plans. This is a slow and sacred process. It does not happen by force, it happens by recognition. The moment you see that the future is not asking to be solved, but to be surrendered, your thoughts begin to change their rhythm. And in this new rhythm, even without visible solutions, a different kind of peace starts to appear. The illusion of control. Control often disguises itself as responsibility. It speaks with the voice of maturity, of preparation, of wisdom. And for a long time you believed that thinking about everything in advance was the way to avoid pain. You called it being strong. You called it being careful. But in seasons of uncertainty, this habit reveals its true nature, because no amount of planning can produce the security your heart is searching for. The more you try to organize the future, the more you feel the weight of not being able to reach it. You start to carry conversations that have not happened, decisions that are not required today, outcomes that belong to God alone. And without noticing, your mind becomes a place of permanent tension. The illusion of control is powerful because it gives you the sensation of movement. While you are thinking, analyzing, imagining solutions, you feel active. You feel as if you are doing something to protect your life. Surrender, on the other hand, feels like standing still in the middle of a storm. It feels exposed. It feels irresponsible. This is why letting go is so difficult, not because you do not trust God, but because control became your way of feeling safe. It became your emotional shelter. When everything was predictable, control worked silently in the background. Now that nothing is fully defined, it demands more and more of your mental energy. And what once felt like protection begins to feel like a prison. There is also a deeper fear hidden behind this need. The fear that if you stop thinking about it, everything will fall apart. The fear that peace means neglect. The fear that surrender means loss. And this fear keeps your mind in constant activity because stopping feels dangerous. But what you call control is often only an attempt to avoid the vulnerability of trust. Trust requires you to accept that you do not see everything. Trust requires you to continue walking without guarantees. And for a mind trained to equate certainty with safety, this feels like stepping into the unknown without armor. This is why true peace begins at the exact point where control ends. Not because your circumstances change, but because your position inside them changes. You stop trying to be the source of your own stability. You stop demanding from yourself answers that only God can give. And something unexpected happens. The energy that was being consumed by endless thinking begins to return as clarity. Not clarity about the future, but clarity about what belongs to today. You begin to notice that life is still being sustained even without your constant mental intervention. Your breath continues. Your steps continue. Your path, even if undefined, continues to exist. God does not ask you to abandon responsibility. He invites you to release the illusion that you are the one holding everything together, because as long as you believe that your thoughts are what keep your life from collapsing, your mind will never rest. Rest begins when you accept that there is a presence sustaining you beyond your understanding. And this acceptance is not passive. It is an active repositioning of your trust. You still make decisions, you still plan what is necessary, but you no longer try to live mentally in a time that has not arrived. This shift is subtle but profound. The same situations that once triggered urgency begin to lose their power. You start to recognize when your mind tries to take control again, when it begins to build scenarios in search of safety, and instead of following that movement, you return to the present moment where God is. Control always pulls you into the future. Surrender always brings you back to where grace is available now. And in this return, your thoughts begin to slow down, not because you forced them, but because they no longer carry the responsibility of being your refuge. Letting go of control is not losing your life, it is recovering your soul. It is discovering that peace was never the result of having everything defined, but of knowing that even in the undefined, you are being guided. And as this truth starts to settle within you, the need to anticipate every outcome begins to fade. The future remains unknown, but it no longer feels threatening because you are no longer trying to enter it alone. The place that was once filled with tension becomes a space where trust can finally breathe. And this is where the mind starts to experience a new kind of silence. Not the silence of having answers, but the silence of no longer needing to control what has already been placed in the hands of God. When God allows the noise, there are seasons when the noise in your mind is not immediately removed, and this can be confusing because you expected that seeking God would bring instant calm. You prayed, you worshipped, you tried to focus, and yet the thoughts kept coming. In those moments, it is easy to believe that something is wrong with your faith, or that God is distant. But there is a difference between a mind that is being attacked and a mind that is being transformed. When God begins to lead you into a deeper level of trust, He does not always start by changing your circumstances. He starts by exposing the internal structures that have been sustaining your sense of security. The noise reveals what silence could not show. It brings to the surface the fears that were hidden behind routine, the expectations that were never surrendered, the areas where your peace depended on outcomes. Without this exposure, you would continue living with a fragile stability, a calm that only existed while everything was going according to your plans. The mental agitation you are experiencing is not proof of absence. It is often the evidence of a process. God is not creating confusion. He is allowing you to see clearly what has been occupying your mind for years without being questioned. This is the same pattern seen in the lives of those who walked closely with Him. Elijah did not hear the voice of God in the wind, in the earthquake, or in the fire. The noise came first, the emotional collapse came first, the exhaustion came first. Only after everything that he thought was strength was removed did he recognize the gentle voice that had always been there. The storm did not mean that God had left him. It meant that God was leading him into a place where his dependence would no longer be on his own capacity. In the same way, when your thoughts become loud and your usual ways of finding peace stop working, you are being invited into a different kind of listening. You are learning to seek His presence beyond emotional comfort. In the past, peace meant feeling good, feeling certain, feeling in control. Now peace is becoming the ability to remain even when those sensations are not immediately present. This is a deeper work. It is the transition from a faith that depends on what you feel to a faith that is anchored in who He is. And during this transition, the mind resists because it is losing its old role as the place where everything was resolved. God allows the noise not to punish you, but to detach you from the illusion that your thoughts are the source of your stability. Every time you realize that you cannot quiet your mind by yourself, you are being positioned to experience a peace that comes from Him and not from your own effort. The moment you stop trying to produce calm and start allowing His presence to hold you even in the agitation, the meaning of silence changes. Silence is no longer the absence of thoughts. It becomes the awareness that you are not alone inside them. This is why this season feels different from anything you have lived before. The strategies that once worked no longer bring relief. The distractions that once silenced your fears no longer have the same effect. You are being led into an intimacy where your refuge is not a solution, not an answer, not a plan, but the person of God Himself. And this kind of refuge is built in the middle of the noise, not outside of it. Because if you learn to recognize His presence while your mind is still searching, you will carry this peace into every future uncertainty. The noise is not the final state. It is the transition. It is the space where you are discovering that God is not waiting for you on the other side of your calm. He is with you in the middle of your mental unrest. And as this truth becomes real to you, something begins to soften. You no longer see your thoughts as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a place where you will learn to remain with Him. The agitation loses its power to define you because it is no longer interpreted as distance. It becomes the environment where a new kind of stillness is being formed, one that does not depend on perfect conditions to exist. Peace as a supernatural state. Peace begins to appear when you stop treating it as a feeling and start recognizing it as a presence. For a long time, you believed that peace would come when the situation changed, when the answer arrived, when the path became clear. You associated it with resolution, with certainty, with visible movement. But the peace that comes from God does not follow the logic of circumstances. It enters in the middle of them, not as an explanation, but as a different atmosphere inside your soul. This is why two people can live the same uncertainty and experience completely different inner worlds. One is consumed by anticipation, the other is sustained by something that cannot be seen. This peace is supernatural because it does not depend on the mind understanding everything. Your thoughts may still be searching, your future may still be undefined, and yet there is a quiet center forming within you. It is not emotional numbness. It is not denial. It is the awareness that your life is being held by a faithfulness greater than your ability to foresee what comes next. When this awareness begins to grow, the urgency that once dominated your mind starts to lose its authority. The same questions may come, but they no longer create the same internal reaction because your sense of safety is no longer attached to the answers. There is a sacred difference between a calm that you produce and a peace that you receive. The calm you try to create depends on control. It requires everything to align with your expectations. It is fragile because any unexpected change can remove it. The peace that comes from God is stable even when your emotions move. It allows you to feel without being dominated by what you feel. It allows you to think without being imprisoned by your thoughts. It does not eliminate the reality of uncertainty. It transforms your position inside it. Instead of standing as someone trying to solve everything, you begin to stand as someone being sustained. This transformation happens quietly. You start to notice that there are moments in your day when your mind is no longer racing as before. Not because you forced it to stop, but because something within you is resting. You begin to breathe differently. Your body, which was always prepared for the next problem, begins to release tension. You find yourself able to remain in the present without immediately traveling to the future. These are not small changes. They are signs that your inner world is being reorganized by a presence that does not need visible proof to be real. The peace of God also changes the way you interpret time. Waiting no longer feels like being forgotten. Silence no longer feels like absence. Delay no longer feels like loss. You begin to perceive that there is movement even when you cannot see it. This does not come from positive thinking. It comes from communion. The more you recognize His nearness, the less power uncertainty has to define your emotional state. The future remains in His hands, but your heart is no longer trying to enter it ahead of time. This is why this peace cannot be manufactured. It is received when you allow your mind to stop being the place where everything must be resolved and become the place where His presence is welcomed. It is not the result of having fewer thoughts. It is the result of having a deeper center, a center where your identity is not based on what you are going through, but on who is walking with you. When this center becomes real, the noise that once seemed overwhelming becomes distant, like waves that still exist but no longer invade the shore of your soul. You begin to understand that peace is not the reward at the end of the process. It is the environment in which the process happens. It sustains you while nothing is clear. It strengthens you while answers are still forming. It keeps your heart from collapsing under the weight of expectation. And the most beautiful part is that this peace is not something you have to protect. It is something that protects you. It guards your mind, not by removing every thought, but by establishing a truth stronger than them. As this supernatural peace grows, your relationship with uncertainty changes. You no longer see it as a threat to your stability, but as a space where your trust is being rooted more deeply. You are not waiting for life to become predictable to feel safe. You are discovering that safety has become a person, and that person is present now. And in this discovery, your mind finds a rest that it could never achieve by effort, because it is finally living in the place where it was always meant to dwell, not in control, not in fear, but in the quiet strength of being held by God. Biblical minds under pressure. The Bible does not hide the inner battles of those who walked closest to God. It reveals them with an honesty that breaks the illusion that faith eliminates mental struggle. Peter stepped out of the boat in a moment of impossible courage, his eyes fixed on Jesus, his heart aligned with a word that defied the logic of the storm. But the moment his attention shifted to the wind, his mind entered the same place you know so well, the place where circumstances become louder than the voice that called you. He did not begin to sink because the storm grew stronger. The storm was already there. He began to sink when his focus moved from presence to prediction, from who was sustaining him to what could happen to him. This is the pressure that uncertainty places on the mind. It tries to redirect your attention from the one who speaks to the waves themselves. David carried promises that were clear, yet lived long seasons where nothing around him confirmed them. He had already been anointed king, yet his daily reality was hiding in caves, running without understanding the timing of God. Imagine the thoughts that visited him in those nights. The questions about whether he had misunderstood his calling, the temptation to take control of his own destiny when the opportunity appeared. He had the chance to end his waiting with his own hands, to remove Saul and accelerate the future. But the silence of God was not abandonment, it was formation. In that silence, his mind was being trained to rest in the character of God rather than in visible progress. The Psalms he wrote were not songs from a place of constant emotional stability. They were the language of a soul that learned to return again and again to trust, even when surrounded by uncertainty. Elijah reached a point where his mind collapsed under the weight of exhaustion. After witnessing power, after seeing fire fall from heaven, after confronting false prophets, he ran into the wilderness asking to die. His thoughts told him that he was alone, that nothing had changed, that his journey had been useless. This is what pressure does. When it meets a tired soul, it distorts perception. God did not begin by correcting his theology. He allowed him to rest. He fed him. He let him sleep. Then he led him to a mountain where the noise of wind, earthquake, and fire passed before him. The voice came in a whisper, not because God had been absent in the noise, but because Elijah needed to learn that divine presence is not always found in what overwhelms the senses. Your mind under pressure also searches for God in dramatic changes, in immediate solutions, in visible signs, and when they do not come, it assumes distance. But the whisper continues, steady and near, waiting for the moment when your inner agitation no longer defines your ability to hear. Even Jesus, in the garden, entered a place where the weight of what was coming touched his human mind. He did not deny the anguish, he expressed it. He did not pretend that the path was easy. He surrendered to the will of the Father within the tension of his own desire. This reveals a sacred truth. Mental pressure is not the absence of obedience. The presence of intense emotion is not the absence of faith. What defines the outcome is the direction you take within the struggle. He returned to prayer again and again, not because the circumstance changed, but because communion repositioned his heart. The storm remained, the cross remained, but his mind was anchored in the relationship that gave meaning to everything. These lives show that the battlefield of the mind has always been part of the journey of those who follow God. What changes is not the existence of pressure, but the place where your attention rests. When your focus returns to who He is, even if your thoughts still try to run, they no longer have the power to define your reality. You begin to walk on waters that have not become calm. You begin to wait in caves without losing your identity. You begin to hear whispers in the middle of noise. The same uncertainty that once made you feel abandoned becomes the environment where your intimacy deepens, where your perception is purified, where your faith stops depending on visible confirmation. Your mind under pressure is not a sign that your story is off course. It is the same terrain where God formed those who came before you. Their struggles were recorded not to expose their weakness, but to show you that divine faithfulness does not require a perfect emotional state to remain present. It requires a heart that keeps returning. And as you see your own experience reflected in theirs, the sense of isolation begins to break. You are not the only one who has prayed with a restless mind. You are not the only one who has tried to trust while feeling overwhelmed. You are walking a path that has always been marked by the tension between promise and process. And in this tension, the same God who sustained them is sustaining you, not waiting for your thoughts to become silent, but teaching you to recognize His voice above them. Prophetic recognition moment. There is a reason why this message is reaching you in this exact season, and deep inside, you already sense it. You did not arrive here by distraction. You have been asking for a sign, not always with words, sometimes only with the weight you carry in your chest when the day ends and your mind refuses to rest. You have been telling God that you are tired of pretending to be strong, tired of trying to understand everything, tired of feeling surrounded by decisions and not knowing which direction will bring peace. And while you were trying to appear stable on the outside, your heart has been quietly saying that you cannot continue like this without His intervention. This is for the one who has been waking up in the middle of the night with thoughts that do not stop, for the one who keeps checking for answers that have not arrived, for the one who is afraid of making the wrong move and losing what took years to build. You have been carrying responsibilities that no one else sees. You have been fighting to keep your faith alive while your emotions move in the opposite direction. There are moments when you feel close to God and moments when everything feels distant, and this fluctuation has made you question your own consistency. But the fact that you are here now is not random. It is a response to a prayer you thought had not been heard. You asked for peace without knowing how it would come. You asked for direction without realizing that before showing you the path, God would quiet the noise that prevents you from seeing it. What you called delay was protection. What you called silence was preparation. You thought you were losing clarity, but in reality you were being removed from environments, expectations, and internal pressures that were shaping your decisions through fear. The confusion you have been feeling is not the absence of guidance. It is the dismantling of voices that were never meant to lead you. There is also something you have not said to anyone. The fear that time is passing, that you should already have an answer, that others seem to be moving forward while you remain in the same place. You compare your hidden process with the visible results of others, and this comparison intensifies the noise in your mind. But your journey is not late. It is being aligned. God is not working with your urgency, He is working with your purpose. And purpose requires a foundation that cannot be built while your mind is dominated by anxiety. This is the moment where recognition becomes transformation. Because as you listen, something inside you begins to calm, not because your situation has changed, but because you are realizing that you are seen. Your struggle has been seen. Your effort to remain faithful has been seen. The nights when you chose not to give up even without understanding have been seen. Heaven has not been indifferent to your process. There is a precise attention over your life, guiding details you cannot perceive yet. And the more this awareness grows, the less power fear has to convince you that you are alone in this season. You're not being asked to solve your future tonight. You are being invited to release the position you have been occupying as the one responsible for everything. The pressure you feel to know, to decide, to fix, begins to lose its authority when you recognize that God is already moving in areas you cannot reach with your thoughts. This recognition is the beginning of rest. Because rest is not the absence of responsibility, it is the understanding that you are not the source of your own stability. Something is being realigned in your inner world right now. The same mind that was full of noise is starting to perceive a different rhythm. The urgency that was suffocating you begins to slow down. You start to feel that you do not need to have every answer in this moment to remain safe. This is not emotional relief produced by words. This is the Holy Spirit touching the place where your thoughts have been running in circles and establishing a new center of trust. And as this happens, you begin to see your season from another perspective. You are not stuck. You are being positioned. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. You are not losing time. You are being formed in a way that will allow you to walk into what is coming without being destroyed by the weight of it. The uncertainty that once looked like a threat now becomes the space where your dependence is being rooted in God alone. This is your confirmation, not that everything will be resolved immediately, but that you are exactly where grace can reach you. That your life is under a guidance that does not depend on your ability to foresee the next step, and that the peace you have been asking for is not in the future, it is beginning now, in this recognition that you are not navigating this season by yourself. The transition from noise to surrender. You do not move from noise to peace by forcing your thoughts to stop. You move by changing where you rest your attention. For a long time, you tried to fight what was happening inside your mind, as if silence was something you could achieve through effort. Every attempt created more tension, because the more you tried not to think, the more aware you became of the thoughts. This is the moment where you are invited into a different posture. Instead of resisting the noise, you begin to step out of the place where it had authority over you. Surrender starts when you accept that your mind was never designed to be your refuge. It was designed to be a place that receives direction, not the source that creates it. As long as you look to your own understanding for security, your thoughts will continue to run in circles, searching for an exit that does not exist. But when your focus shifts from solving to trusting, something inside you begins to slow down. Not because the questions disappeared, but because they are no longer the center of your inner world. This transition is quiet and deeply personal. It happens when you stop asking for immediate answers and start allowing yourself to remain in the present moment with God. Your breathing changes. Your body, which was always prepared for the next problem, begins to release the invisible tension it has been carrying. You notice the space between one thought and another. You realize that you are still being sustained even without knowing what comes next. This realization is not intellectual, it is experiential. It is the discovery that you can remain without collapsing. Surrender is not giving up on your life. It is giving back to God what you were never able to control. It is placing the future where it has always belonged and allowing today to exist without being invaded by what has not arrived. This does not make you passive. It makes you present, and presence is the place where communion happens. While your mind was traveling through tomorrow, you could not perceive the grace available now. But as you return, you begin to notice small evidences of care that were always there. The strength to continue, the provision that came at the right time, the protection in situations you did not even see. The noise loses its intensity when it is no longer fed by your fear. Thoughts may still come, but they pass like clouds, because they no longer find a heart that tries to hold them. You observe them without entering into every scenario. You recognize their movement and gently return your attention to the one who remains. This is not an instant transformation, it is a new rhythm being formed within you. Each time you choose to trust instead of anticipate, a deeper layer of rest is established. There is also a sacred exchange taking place. Where there was urgency, a quiet patience begins to grow. Where there was fear of the future, a sense of being guided begins to appear. You start to understand that your life is not a sequence of random events that you must manage alone. There is a direction, there is a care, there is a presence that goes before you. And this awareness changes the way you inhabit your own story. You no longer walk as someone trying to avoid every possible mistake. You walk as someone being led. This is the point where your relationship with uncertainty is transformed. It is no longer an enemy that must be defeated for you to have peace. It becomes the environment where your trust is exercised and strengthened. You stop waiting for everything to be defined, to feel calm. You begin to experience calm while things are still undefined. This is the sign that surrender has begun to take root. And as this root grows, your mind starts to experience a new kind of silence, not the silence of having control, but the silence of being held. The internal pressure that once demanded constant solutions is replaced by a stable awareness that you are not alone in the process. You are no longer trying to enter the future with your thoughts. You are allowing God to lead you into it in His time. This is where true rest begins, not as an escape from reality, but as a new way of standing within it. The prayer that reorders the mind. Father, in this moment, I stop trying to understand everything. I bring before you the noise that has been living inside me, the thoughts that do not rest, the scenarios that repeat themselves even when I want to trust. You see the fatigue that no one else notices. You know how many times I tried to appear strong while feeling overwhelmed. I do not hide this from you. I place my mind exactly as it is in your presence. I release the need to control what has not yet happened. I give back to you the future that I have been trying to carry alone. Every answer that has not come, every decision that still feels undefined, every fear of making the wrong move, I surrender now. Teach my heart to remain in today. Teach my thoughts to return to the place where your voice is louder than my anticipation. Quiet what is agitated within me, not by removing my responsibilities, but by establishing your peace at the center of them. Where there is urgency, create patience. Where there is confusion, create a steady trust. Where my mind runs to the worst possibilities, anchor me in the truth that you are already in my tomorrow. I renounce the belief that I must solve everything to be safe. My safety is in you. Holy Spirit, walk through every place in my mind that has been occupied by fear. Touch the memories that still generate anxiety. Touch the expectations that became heavy. Touch the areas where I feel that time is passing and I am standing still. Reorder my inner world. Let your presence become the atmosphere where my thoughts learn to rest. I do not ask for a life without uncertainty. I ask for a heart that remains stable within it. Give me the grace to accept what I cannot change today, and the clarity to do what is in front of me without being invaded by tomorrow. When my thoughts try to return to control, remind me gently that I am being led. When the night comes and my mind wants to run again, let me remember that you never sleep, and that my life continues in your hands even while I rest. I declare that my mind does not belong to fear. My mind belongs to the peace of Christ. I declare that uncertainty will not define my emotional state. Your faithfulness will. I declare that I'm not alone in this process. Even when I do not feel it, you are sustaining me. Even when I do not see it, you are working. Today I receive a peace that does not depend on explanations, a peace that guards my thoughts, a peace that slows my breathing, a peace that allows me to remain. I accept that I am being guided step by step. I accept that your timing is not against me. I accept that what is coming will find me prepared because you are forming me now. And as I continue my journey, let this prayer remain alive inside me. Not as words repeated, but as a new position of trust. My mind rests in you. My future rests in you. My life rests in you. Amen. Identity after surrender. The uncertainty has not disappeared. The unanswered questions may still exist, and yet something inside you is no longer in the same place. You notice it in the way your thoughts come without taking control, in the way your breathing remains steady even when the future is mentioned, in the way your heart no longer reacts with the same urgency. This is the sign that surrender has changed your position. You are no longer living inside the storm. You are standing with God in the middle of it. Your identity begins to detach from what you are going through. For a long time, you introduced yourself to yourself through your struggles, through the decisions you had to make, through the fear of making mistakes, through the waiting that seemed endless. Now, there is a deeper definition forming. You are not the person trying to hold everything together. You are the person being sustained. This shift is quiet, but it changes everything, because when your identity is rooted in being held, the need to predict every outcome loses its power. You start to walk differently through the same life. Situations that once triggered immediate tension now meet a heart that pauses before reacting. The space between what happens and what you feel becomes wider, and in that space you remember the peace you received. This is how your mind is guarded, not by the absence of challenges, but by the presence that has become your center. You no longer look at the future as a threat that must be solved. You look at it as a path where you will be accompanied. There is also a new relationship with time. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not losing your life while you wait. You are being formed in a rhythm that matches the purpose for which you were created. The The pressure to compare your journey with others begins to fall away because your sense of direction no longer comes from what you see around you. It comes from the communion you have within you. You begin to trust that what is for you will arrive in the time when your soul is strong enough to carry it without fear. This new identity is not fragile because it is not built on your emotional state. There will still be days when thoughts try to return to their old patterns, moments when uncertainty knocks again with the same questions. But now you know where to stand. You know how to return. You know that peace is not something you must recreate every time. It is something that already lives in you, and each time you choose to remain in this truth, it becomes more natural, more stable, more real. You also begin to see your story from another perspective. The season that once looked like a delay becomes the place where your roots grew deeper. The nights that once felt like abandonment become the nights where you learn to rest without answers. The confusion that once made you doubt becomes the environment where your discernment was sharpened. Nothing was wasted. Every moment was part of a formation that could not happen while you were living only from control. Now, when you think about what is ahead, there is space for hope without anxiety. You can make plans without trying to live inside them. You can dream without feeling that everything depends on your ability to manage the outcome. You move forward with a quiet confidence, not in your own strength, but in the certainty that you are guided. This is the freedom that surrender creates. You still care, you still act, you still decide, but you no longer carry the weight of being the one who must guarantee everything. The same life continues, but you continue as someone different. The mind that once ran in circles now has a place to return to. The heart that once reacted with fear now responds with trust. The future that once looked like a dark space now looks like a territory already known by God. And in this new way of existing, peace is no longer an occasional visitor. It becomes your environment. This is who you are after surrender. Not someone without questions, but someone who is not defined by them. Not someone who controls the path, but someone who walks it with God. Not someone who escaped uncertainty, but someone who discovered that uncertainty cannot remove the presence that sustains your life. And from this place you continue, step by step, with a mind that has learned where to rest and a soul that finally understands that being held is stronger than understanding.